Hello Army, welcome back to the channel, and oh my goodness, do I have something fun for you today? Because today we are not talking about a world tour. We are not talking about a chart record or a streaming milestone or a magazine cover. Today we are talking about something that is simultaneously more lighthearted and somehow just as iconic as all of those things, because today we are talking about Jungkook, food, and the absolute unstoppable force that is his connection to everything culinary. Specifically, we are talking about the moment that Bugs Music, one of South Korea's major music platforms, officially crowned Jungkook of BTS as the #1 New Year mukbang star, and what that means in the context of a cultural phenomenon that ARMY has been living and breathing for years. So get comfortable, because this one is going to be a full deep dive, and yes, you are probably going to be hungry by the end of it. Let's start with the headline itself, because it is genuinely remarkable when you look at the numbers. Jungkook won the Bugs platform's New Year Mukbang Star voting competition with a total of 559,347 votes, which represented 60.8% of all votes cast in the entire competition. Let that sink in for a second. He did not just win. He did not just edge out the competition by a comfortable margin. He captured more than 60% of the total vote. In a platform-wide competition where presumably multiple popular figures were being voted on by their respective fanbases, Jungkook walked away with nearly 2/3 of the entire vote total. That is not a win. That is a statement. That is ARMY saying, very clearly and very loudly, that when it comes to food culture, when it comes to mukbang energy, when it comes to the intersection of personality and cuisine and the kind of warmth that makes watching someone eat genuinely entertaining and comforting, there is one name and one name only at the top of that list. But here is the thing, and this is what makes this story so much richer than just a voting result. The reason ARMY voted for Jungkook in such overwhelming numbers is not random. It is not arbitrary fan loyalty, although of course fan loyalty plays a role in any voting competition. The reason Jungkook won this specific award so decisively is because he has genuinely, authentically, and consistently earned the title of Mukbang King over years and years of content, moments, live streams, and meals that have become legendary in the fandom. The Bugs platform did not create this narrative. They simply put an official stamp on something that ARMY already knew to be true. To understand why this moment matters so much, you have to understand the full history of Jungkook's relationship with food, because it is a relationship that goes back to the very early days of his career and has only deepened and become more elaborate and more culturally significant over time. From the beginning, Jungkook has always been someone who makes no secret of the fact that he loves to eat. And we are not talking about the kind of performative food enthusiasm that you sometimes see from celebrities who mention liking a particular dish in an interview and then go back to their strictly controlled diet. We are talking about a genuine, deep, joyful, almost childlike love of food in all its forms that has never wavered, never been hidden, and never been packaged for consumption. It has always just been who he is. The most iconic example of this, and probably the starting point for anyone who wants to understand Jungkook's food legacy, is his relationship with samgyeopsal. For those who are not familiar, samgyeopsal is grilled pork belly, one of the most beloved and iconic dishes in Korean cuisine, typically cooked at the table on a grill and eaten wrapped in lettuce leaves with various accompaniments including garlic, kimchi, green onion salad, and gochujang paste. It is communal food. It is celebratory food. It is the kind of meal that brings people together and creates memories. And Jungkook has spoken about samgyeopsal as his favorite food so many times, so consistently, and with such genuine enthusiasm that it has become one of his defining characteristics as a public figure. But what took it to another level entirely was the moment when Jungkook did not just eat samgyeopsal on camera or talk about eating samgyeopsal in an interview. He composed a spontaneous song about it. In one of the most beloved and frequently replayed moments in BTS fan content history, Jungkook improvised a little melody celebrating samgyeopsal, singing its praises with the same vocal talent he brings to his actual recorded music but deployed entirely in service of expressing how much he loves grilled pork belly. That moment became iconic not because it was planned or produced or particularly polished, but because it was so completely, effortlessly genuine. He was not performing joy. He was just experiencing it, and he let everyone see it, and that authenticity is at the heart of everything that makes Jungkook's food persona so beloved. From that point, the connection between Jungkook and food culture grew organically in the way that the best fan phenomena do, through accumulation of real moments, through consistent behavior over time, through the kind of authentic repetition that cannot be manufactured. And one of the most fascinating expressions of this phenomenon is something that the ARMY community came to call Jungkook Meet Road. Now, if you are new to this concept, Jungkook Meet Road refers to a community-curated list of restaurants and food establishments that Jungkook has visited or been spotted at, primarily in Seoul but extending to various locations globally. The list exists because fans noticed a pattern when Jungkook visited a restaurant and the visit became known, either through his own content, through fan sightings, or through other channels. That restaurant would inevitably experience a dramatic surge in customers. ARMY from across Korea and from around the world would seek out the places he had eaten, wanting to experience the same food he had enjoyed, wanting to feel some kind of connection to him through the shared experience of a meal. And here is the thing about Jungkook Meet Road: it is not just a fan fantasy or a constructed narrative. It is a real and documented economic phenomenon. The restaurants on the list have spoken publicly about the increase in customers they experienced after being associated with Jungkook. Some of them have even created menu items or experiences specifically in reference to his visits. This is cultural influence operating at a level that goes well beyond typical celebrity endorsement, because it was never endorsement. Jungkook never got paid to visit those restaurants. He was just a young man who loves to eat, eating at places he enjoyed, and the ripple effects of his presence created genuine economic activity for small businesses and local food establishments. That is the Jungkook Meet Road. It is real. And the fact that the Bugs platform just acknowledged him as the official New Year mukbang star is, in many ways, simply the formal recognition of something that has been true for years. Now let's talk about his live stream cooking content, because this is another massive piece of the puzzle and one that has contributed enormously to his reputation as a genuine food personality rather than just a celebrity who happens to like eating. Through his personal live streams, Jungkook has shown ARMY not just his enthusiasm for consuming food but his genuine creativity and skill in preparing it. And the dishes he has made on camera range from the simple and comforting to the surprisingly sophisticated and inventive. Some of the most memorable dishes from his live cooking content include his perilla oil spicy mayo noodles, which became a viral sensation in its own right, with fans recreating the recipe at home based on what they watched him do on stream. There is his creamy shrimp pasta with sea urchin, which represents a level of culinary ambition that genuinely surprised a lot of people who might have expected something more straightforward. And then there is what the fandom has collectively called his bulguri recipe, his personal take on ramen noodles that he has refined and adjusted over multiple live streams into something that fans consider genuinely special, genuinely Jungkook, genuinely worth trying to recreate. What all of these dishes have in common is that they feel like expressions of personality. They are not the kind of food content you get from someone who is performing a cooking segment for a camera. They are the kind of food content you get from someone who genuinely enjoys the process of cooking, who experiments and adjusts and tries things, who gets excited when something comes out well and is honest when something does not go exactly as planned. Watching Jungkook cook on livestream has always felt like being invited into his actual life, not a curated version of it, and that intimacy is incredibly powerful in terms of building the kind of connection that makes 559,000 people vote for you as a mukbang star. There is also his reputation for being spotted eating alone at restaurants, and I want to spend a moment on this because I think it is actually quite meaningful. There have been multiple occasions where Jungkook has been photographed or spotted by fans eating by himself at various restaurants, quietly, without fanfare, just a young man having a meal. And what strikes me about these moments is not the sighting itself but the way he has handled the fan interactions that sometimes occur in those moments. He is known for being genuinely warm and accessible when fans approach him in those situations, willing to sign autographs and take photos even when he is clearly just trying to enjoy a meal in peace. That warmth, that lack of distance or defensiveness even in private moments, is completely consistent with everything we know about who Jungkook is, and it makes every story about his restaurant visits feel personal rather than public. Now I want to zoom out and look at the bigger cultural picture here, because what Jungkook represents in terms of food culture is actually quite significant beyond just the fan community. Korean food has experienced an absolutely remarkable rise in global prominence over the last decade, driven by a combination of factors including the Korean wave in entertainment, the popularity of Korean dramas and films internationally, and the global reach of K-pop. BTS themselves have been one of the most powerful drivers of international interest in Korean culture generally, and food is an absolutely central part of that cultural package. When ARMY around the world started learning about samgyeopsal because of Jungkook, when they started looking up Korean barbecue restaurants in their home cities because watching him enjoy it made them want to experience it themselves, when they recreated his ramen recipe in kitchens from Indonesia to Brazil to the United States, all of that is cultural transmission happening through genuine enthusiasm rather than formal promotion. The connection to what has been described in terms of sustainable development goals is genuinely interesting in this context. The idea that a popular figure's authentic relationship with food culture can drive economic growth for small businesses and culinary communities, that it can help preserve and promote food heritage by making it visible and desirable to global audiences, these are not trivial effects. The Jungkook Meet Road is not just a fun fan thing. It is an example of how cultural influence, when it comes from a place of genuine authenticity rather than commercial calculation, can have real and positive ripple effects across multiple dimensions of community and economic life. Let's also talk about what the Bugs voting result tells us about ARMY as a community, because I think it says something really beautiful. The fact that ARMY organized and mobilized to give Jungkook a 60% majority in a mukbang voting competition tells you something about how deeply fans engage with the full picture of who their favorite artists are, not just the performer on stage, not just the voice on the record, but the whole person with their quirks and their enthusiasms and their habits and their favorite foods. ARMY knows Jungkook loves samgyeopsal. ARMY knows about the bulguri recipe. ARMY knows about Jungkook Meet Road. ARMY has watched him cook on livestream and recreated his dishes and visited his favorite restaurants. And when given an opportunity to formally recognize that whole dimension of who he is, they showed up in overwhelming numbers to do exactly that. That kind of comprehensive engagement with an artist as a full human being, rather than just as a performer, is one of the things that makes the BTS-ARMY relationship so distinctive and so genuinely unprecedented in pop music history. Other fandoms are dedicated and passionate, but the depth and breadth of the knowledge and engagement that ARMY has with every dimension of each BTS member's personality and life is something that consistently astonishes outside observers. The Bugs Mukbang Star result is a perfect example of that depth in action. It is also worth appreciating the sheer delight of this specific recognition. We spend a lot of time in this community talking about chart records and tour announcements and album releases and award show results, all of which are genuinely important and exciting. But there is something particularly joyful about a moment that centers on something as fundamentally human and universally relatable as food. Everyone eats. Everyone has favorite foods. Everyone has had the experience of watching someone eat something that looks absolutely incredible and feeling that vicarious pleasure of wanting to experience it yourself. Jungkook has been giving ARMY that experience for years, and the Bugs platform just put a number on it. 559,347 people said yes, this person is our mukbang king. And honestly? The other 39.2% of voters probably just had their biases in the running and gave it their best shot, because the competition for this specific title was never really a competition at all. I also want to take a moment to talk about why mukbang culture resonates so deeply with audiences, because understanding that helps explain why Jungkook specifically is so well suited to this title. Mukbang is a cultural format originated in South Korea and has since spread globally, and at its core it is about the combination of food and company. The word itself is a portmanteau of the Korean words for eating and broadcast, and the format emerged partly in response to the reality that many people, particularly in urban environments, eat alone and find the experience of watching someone eat comforting. It creates a sense of shared mealtime even when you are physically by yourself. There is genuine psychological research suggesting that watching mukbang content activates social responses in viewers, creating a feeling of connection and companionship. And Jungkook, perhaps more than almost any other public figure who has created food content, embodies the warmth and companionship that makes mukbang culture genuinely comforting rather than just visually interesting. When you watch Jungkook eat on livestream, you do not feel like you are watching a performance. You feel like you are having a meal with someone who is genuinely happy to have you there. That quality, that warmth, that ease, that sense of genuine presence and enjoyment is not something you can manufacture or learn from a content strategy guide. It is just who he is, and it is why 559,347 people voted for him, and it is why Jungkook Meet Road is a real phenomenon that affects actual restaurants and actual economies. So where does this moment fit in the larger story of Jungkook's 2026? It fits right alongside everything else we have been covering: the Rolling Stone cover, the Ararang album, the world tour, the renewed energy and clarity of purpose that has characterized his return from military service. Because this Mukbang King title is not separate from any of that. It is part of the same portrait of a person who is deeply, authentically himself in every dimension of his life. The same Jungkook who sat down with Rolling Stone and admitted he is still forming his sense of self, who talked about trying every English learning app and working on his voice like a slow turtle. That same Jungkook is the one who improvised a song about samgyeopsal and cooked shrimp pasta with sea urchin on livestream and ate alone at restaurants with quiet warmth for fans who approached him. It is all one person. And that consistency, that completeness, is what makes him so genuinely extraordinary. As we head into the rest of 2026, with the Ararang tour running through March 2027 and solo activities continuing alongside that, ARMY is going to have an enormous amount of Jungkook content to enjoy. And I hope that in the midst of all the big moments, the sold-out shows, the chart records, the magazine features, we keep celebrating the small ones too. The moments like this Bugs Award that remind us why we fell in love with these artists in the first place. Not just because of what they can do on stage or in a studio, but because of who they are when the cameras are off and they are just living their lives, eating their favorite foods, cooking on live stream for the fans who tune in to spend time with them. Jungkook is the New Year mukbang star. Bugs made it official. And honestly, the only surprising thing about that is that it took this long for someone to formally recognize what ARMY has known for years. The meat road is real. The bulguri recipe is legendary. The samgyeopsal song lives in our hearts forever. And 559,347 people made sure the world knew exactly who deserves to wear that crown. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that thumbs up button, it makes a huge difference for the channel. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite Jungkook food moment, whether it is the samgyeopsal song, the live stream cooking content, the meat road restaurants, or something else entirely. Subscribe if you have not already, share this with your fellow ARMY, and I will see you in the next one. Purple you all.